Make it work. That's at the top of the agenda for the head of the U.S. Navy. His marching orders on women in combat delivered today at Camp Pendleton. Imagine the California sun and surf without smokers. The reason why a San Diego lawmaker wants beaches to help them kick the habit. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amita Sharma. He says they need to get used to it. That's the message from Navy Secretary Ray Mabus to rank-and-file Marines and the reality of women who qualify for combat positions. He stopped by Camp Pendleton today to talk to hundreds of them about his plan to integrate them into combat roles. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy has more on his visit and his plan.
It's been 3 months since the Pentagon lifted a ban on women serving in ground combat units, such as infantry platoons and amphibious tank crews. Now, Navy Secretary Ray Mabus and other top military officials here at Camp Pendleton are laying out a plan to make it work.
Our first be at ease.
Mabus told the crowd of 1,200 Marines at the School of Infantry that gender integration will be a gradual process. He said boot camp will remain gender divided for now, and as females apply and qualify for ground combat jobs, they will be integrated into units alongside men. Mabus emphasized that the physical standards have been set and they will not change. He also reminded the group of mostly entry-level men that women have served in combat for years, and more than 160 females had lost their lives fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. Mabus told the Marines we're a stronger force every time we become a more diverse force, including when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed.
And every time people would argue that we shouldn't do it. But in the late 40s, when African Americans were integrated into the Marine Corps, there was the concern, and it was voiced vocally, loudly, that it was going to ruin the Marine Corps, that it was going to lower standards, that it was going to change the culture. We are stronger because we have Marines of color.
We're doing slashing, bam, just like so, bam.
More than 200 female Marines have already completed ground combat training as part of an experiment to see if they could handle the battle-hardened roles. They passed the test, they're eligible, but so far, few have applied. Reporting from Camp Pendleton, I'm Susan Murphy for KPBS News.
Another milestone from the Navy today. Navy Secretary Mabus says this branch will use its buying clout to require vendors to report how much climate-changing greenhouse gases they are putting into the atmosphere. The Navy is hoping its $170 billion budget will nudge vendors to cut their emissions. The military calls climate change the biggest threat to national security. Some Border Patrol agents in Texas and New Mexico want to disavow their national union's endorsement of Donald Trump. The National Border Patrol Council says it reached out to union locals across the country before giving that endorsement last month, but agents in the El Paso sector are criticizing the Republican frontrunner for what they call hateful and decisive rhetoric. Tonight, they plan to ask their local chapter to reject the endorsement and take a neutral stance. At the state capitol today, an assembly committee advanced a bill that would make the work of immigration and customs enforcement agents more transparent. The measure, called the Trust Act, would prevent ICE agents from using local law enforcement as deportation agents.
By entangling local law enforcement with ICE and getting local law enforcement in the deportation business, we don't agree with that. We think there needs to be transparency, there needs to be a public process, and the Truth Act would provide that public process.
The measure passed out of the Public Safety Committee. It now moves on to the Appropriations Committee. A former San Diego police officer sent to prison 4 years ago for sexually assaulting women during traffic stops has been released. Anthony Arevalos got out over the weekend. It's unclear why the 45-year-old served less than half the prescribed custody term. He was sentenced to 8 years and 8 months after being convicted of 8 felony and 4 misdemeanor charges. The person behind an initiative that would expand the San Diego Convention Center downtown today said the city is trying to thwart the democratic process by working to keep the initiative off the ballot. KPBS editor Tom Fudge has the story.
San Diego attorney Corey Briggs is the man who is behind what is called the Citizens Plan, which would expand the downtown convention center after raising hotel taxes. But San Diego City Attorney Jan Goldsmith has criticized the plan, saying that the initiative is full of flaws and, in fact, violates state and local law. Now, Corey Briggs responded to this by saying that Jan Goldsmith's statement was nothing more than a political statement, and he said it would be very unjust for the city to try to keep his initiative off the ballot, even if it gathers enough signatures. Here's what Corey Briggs had to say today.
The memo is not a serious legal memo. It's a political document. It appears to me that it is the beginning of a process that the city intends to implement to prevent the voters from once again weighing in on big issues affecting the city's future. If you take a look at the memo, one of the options discussed is the radical and undemocratic idea that the city would simply refuse to put the Citizens Plan on the ballot if we get enough signatures. That's unprecedented to my knowledge.
But City Attorney Jan Goldsmith again said there are many legal flaws in this initiative. For one thing, it has too many policy goals. In addition to wanting to expand the convention center, the Citizens Plan would also find a way to redevelop the old Qualcomm Stadium site into a place for university functions and also an Aztec football stadium. Jan Goldsmith said there's one particular part of the Citizens Plan that is absolutely illegal. Here's what he had to say about that.
Tax funds revenue must first go to the city's treasurer. Then it gets allocated. This initiative allows the hotel operators who collect tax revenue from the guests to simply pocket the money and reimburse themselves for certain expenses. That's illegal under our charter, and it's illegal under state law. There really isn't any doubt. You just can't do that.
Jan Goldsmith went on to say that if the Citizens Plan became law, the city of San Diego would be wrapped up in litigation for many years as a result of that. Now, again, we don't know if the Citizens Plan is going to be on the ballot. They're still collecting signatures.
The local Council on American Islamic Relations is filing a complaint with the state against Belmont Park, alleging 2 Muslim women wearing headscarves were denied access to a ride. The group says the park's refusal to allow the women to ride the Beach Blaster violates their civil rights, and that there were no signs posted outlining Belmont Park's safety concerns. The women spoke today during a news conference. They did not wish to show their faces on camera.
We were actually pretty shocked. We didn't think something like that would ever happen to us.
We kind of felt like we were being isolated. We felt like as if we weren't like Americans.
CARE is also seeking a response from the city of San Diego, which is believed to own the property and may receive compensation from ticket sales at Belmont Park. The San Diego City Council today settled a sexual harassment lawsuit with former San Diego Mayor Bob Filner's executive assistant for $667,000. Venelia Santos Hunter worked for Filner for 8 months. She says during that time, Filner tried to hug and kiss her without her consent and told her she needed him as her lover. The latest settlement is the largest of the 4 the city has paid out so far. City Attorney Jan Goldsmith says there was compelling evidence Santos Hunter was a victim of sexual harassment. A San Diego County supervisor will pay a $3,000 fine for an ethics violation in connection to his work on the California Coastal Commission. As the LA Times reports, Supervisor Greg Cox is a member of the commission and admitted to violating the conflict of interest provisions of the State Political Reform Act. He voted to approve a permit for SeaWorld while his wife owned stock in the company. Cox says he was unaware at the time that she had purchased the stock and self-reported the violation after the vote. State lawmakers are looking to eliminate the statute of limitations on rape and child molestation charges. The bill the bill cleared its first hurdle today, passing a committee that had previously rejected the efforts. It was prompted in part by prosecutors' difficulty in pursuing sexual assault charges against Bill Cosby. Several of the actor's accusers told senators they are unable to bring charges because they didn't come forward years ago, and California law generally requires filing charges within 10 years of the offense. A smoking ban at California state beaches and parks has moved a step closer to reality. Lawmakers advanced a bill out of the committee that would include traditional cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and pot. Supporters say it aims at cutting down on secondhand smoke and cutting back on litter.
I represent San Diego, La Jolla, Del Mar, and all along the beaches you find cigarette butts and other trash. And San Diego, of course, over the last several years has been affected by a number of wildfires. Wildfires are often caused by carelessly disposed cigarettes. For all those reasons, it just makes sense to ban cigarettes, tobacco products from state beaches and from state parks.
The bill now heads to the Appropriations Committee. A traveling memorial honoring California men and women who died while serving their country is now at the state capitol. Their personal stories and military photographs are on display inside the California Museum. The memorial honors more than 700 Californians who died in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. The Remembering Our Fallen from California Memorial will make a stop at San Diego City College in September. A mild spring day on tap for San Diego. Heather Waldman has more in tonight's KPBS weather report.
Well, after a couple of days with persistent clouds and some intermittent showers, weather across the Southland is looking much nicer through the end of this week into the weekend. Of course, the rain was welcome. It helped to keep us on track with our average rainfall throughout the month of April. And even in some spots, we got a little bit ahead of the game. Always a good help there with the drought. But hey, in Southern California, we like our sunshine, and it's come back. A beautiful afternoon. There goes what's left of our storm moving across the Four Corners. Some soaking rain in southern New Mexico this afternoon into the evening. A few clouds moving to central and northern California. Not much in the way of wet weather, but any of it that does fall is going to be to the north of the Bay Area. Tonight, temperatures similar to what we had last night will drop into the mid-40s in Ramona and Alpine, all the way down to 38 degrees in Campo, 34 in Mount Laguna. Coastal areas will stay in the 50s from Oceanside to Chula Vista. Downtown San Diego stays closer to 60 degrees. There will be some clouds that move in late tonight and into Wednesday morning along the coast, but as you go inland towards the deserts, it's going to be warmer as a result of more sunshine as that storm finally moves away. Again, cooler weather at the coast as the onshore flow continues. That means we can see a little bit of those clouds, especially during the morning hours, but the afternoons looking nice once again. Let's take a look at your 5-day forecast at the coast again. We'll watch for those low clouds Wednesday and Thursday morning. The onshore flow backs off by the time we get to the weekend as high pressure sets up off to the north. As a result, we see more sunshine throughout the day, and that sun is going to send our temperatures into the mid-70s both Saturday and Sunday. Enjoy it. That weather is going to be absolutely perfect. Here's your inland forecast. Again, we get away from some of those clouds for the most part. We could see a few more of them build in Thursday morning, but they'll break for more sunshine as we go through Thursday afternoon, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Again, almost picture perfect throughout the entire day. Bright and sunny through the weekend. High temperatures will be in the low to mid 70s each afternoon, and overnight lows will be pretty consistent in the mid to upper 50s each night. Just cool enough that you need a light jacket, but not reaching for anything too heavy. In the mountains, it is, of course, going to be a little bit cooler higher up in elevation, but we'll see lots of sunshine throughout the day and clear skies overnight. Nighttime temperatures get close to freezing in some spots. Temperatures during the day, mid-50s to low 60s. A little cool down here for the end of the week. Looking beautiful, though, by the weekend. Sunday, we get close to 70 degrees into the mountains. In the deserts, finally, temperatures near 90 on Wednesday. That sunshine coming back. And then we cool things off a little bit Thursday into Friday before we warm it back up again, just in time for the weekend. Heather Waldman, KPBS News.
A San Diego federal judge has dismissed a case brought by investors in SeaWorld who say they were misled about the impact the documentary Blackfish had on the company's bottom line. The judge dismissed the case, saying that investors failed to show SeaWorld officials had deliberately made false statements. The securities fraud lawsuit was brought by pension retirement programs from Arkansas state workers and Danish workers. San Diego Coastkeeper has a new executive director. The nonprofit says Tracy Barham will head the water watchdog efforts going forward. Barham has an 18-year history in nonprofit leadership and was most recently director of development for the San Diego Botanic Garden. Coastkeeper has been around since 1995, and its mission is to protect water resources in San Diego. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors plans to spend $1.3 billion over the next 5 years on a slew of projects that include libraries in Alpine and Imperial Beach, a fire station, a new crime lab, and a residential crisis center. The county's chief administrative officer noted at a public meeting this morning that a lot of projects were not on the list, including a new stadium for the Chargers. Following up on a story we told you about last night, the house that was San Diego's first AIDS hospice will soon go up for sale. The City Council today approved putting the Truax house on the market. It has fallen into disrepair, and the city would need to spend nearly $2 million to fully restore it. Councilman Todd Gloria says he doesn't see his colleagues on the council making that kind of spending a priority.
I've toured the property. It needs a lot of TLC. And I'd like to think the city would do that, but I know better. I've been around here 8 years. It's just not going to happen.
Preservationists fear a developer could demolish the house. Gloria responded by placing an extra condition on the sale. The buyer will need to present their development plans for the property and get final approval from the City Council.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour, a New York City program that promises to double graduation rates at community colleges. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
The annual Citizens of Courage Awards were held today, honoring people who have lived through violent crimes and in some way have turned the ordeal into a positive.
They have all survived and made a life for themselves and have reached out to others along the way.
6 people received awards today, including 3 children, one of whom memorized a license plate of a criminal that led to his capture. Also honored, a group trying to keep at-risk individuals employed and contributing to their community.
We're all natives of Southeast San Diego. We've all lived different lives and experienced different things. And one thing we wanted to do is give back to individuals where we saw ourselves in the past.
The awards were started a quarter of a century ago by then District Attorney Ed Miller. The vets at the ASPCA are at the forefront of forensic veterinary science. Associated Press reporter Joseph Frederick says the organization has teamed up with police to streamline the process for getting animal abusers behind bars.
The bullet entered in the back of her mouth on the right side and lodged the base of her skull.
This 3-year-old pit bull named Honey was shot during a case of domestic violence. The American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals has stepped up efforts to crack down on people who abuse animals like Honey by partnering with the New York City Police Department. X-rays like these are used to prosecute the abusers.
We're doing a independent investigation from law enforcement, the sort of parallel investigations, and then it's the prosecutor who puts it together.
The ASPCA's forensic veterinary team, led by Dr. Robert Reisman, collects evidence from animals the NYPD brings in from suspected abuse cases.
So this is the necropsy room. Necropsy is an animal autopsy.
Reisman helped pioneer the field of forensic veterinary medicine and standardize the way vets collect evidence to make it easier for prosecutors to build criminal cases.
There's always a physical examination. There's always a standard group of laboratory tests. At some point after the animal is admitted into the hospital, they'll have X-ray images created. We do photography.
Good girl. Oh, you're posing so well.
Since combining forces with the NYPD in 2014, the ASPCA has seen its caseload skyrocket from about 150 animal cruelty cases a year to 700 last year. And the number of cruelty-related arrests has doubled.
The message is to people who are abusing animals is that there is action being taken, and I think, you know, if they're thinking they may not get caught, that's not always the case. We have you know, a lot of resources to pursue these cases and to hold people accountable.
As for Honey, she's survived, but still has bullet fragments lodged in her skull. Her abuser pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The ASPCA hopes more cities partner with local law enforcement to bring animal abusers like Honey's to justice. Joseph Frederick, Associated Press, New York.
And you want to put her on the scale? Let's zero it out right now.
They're clearing the way for wildfire and wilderness in Oregon. Earthfix producer Jess Burns shows us volunteers who are racing against a federal deadline to remove old barbed wire fence from the land before new restrictions make the task even more difficult.
Early mornings are quiet in the high desert. Unseen birds are sparing with their calls. A silent rabbit chances breakfast in the tall, dry grass. As the desert wakes up, so does the camp on Hedgehog Ridge, high above the John Day River Valley. One by one, volunteers with the Oregon Natural Desert Association, or ONDA, emerge from their tents and greet the morning with strong coffee and small words. They begin preparing for a day of backcountry and barbed wire. And before the sun rises too high, the group heads out.
I'm Fred Sawyer. Yesterday was my birthday. I was 66 years old. So on my birthday, I got to come out on this ONDA trip and four-wheel drive up here to Pine Creek Conservation Area. We're pulling fence.
Pulling fence posts, rolling wire, lugging the steel posts that are up the hills to get them to where we can get them out with a vehicle on the edge of the wilderness area, and that's what the whole job's about. Done.
Barbed wire fencing has been on this land since the late 1800s, soon after the first white settlers began putting down roots in central and eastern Oregon. Volunteers like retired Lapine science teacher M.J. Hare are giving up one of the final weekends of summer to help pull some of the last remaining fence off this land.
Even when I was teaching, I would bring my bags with me and run out and change my clothes and hop in the car, and off I'd go to one of these trips. So it's been part of my life for quite a while.
Jefferson Jacobs is leading the trip.
There is so much landscape out here that is not in its entire natural state that just needs a little nudge to get on a different trajectory.
Fencing can be a good thing, keeping grazing animals out of sensitive environments. But when barbed wire becomes obsolete and is left out on the range, it can create serious problems for wildlife. Removing unneeded fence from Pine Creek and other protected areas like Hart Mountain and the Steens in Oregon has long been a conservation priority.
It can alter how wildlife move through the landscape and can exclude them from important things like springs or easy travel routes or predator-free areas.
The group's volunteers have pulled and hauled more than 500 miles of obsolete fencing across the state. Other conservation groups from Washington to Wyoming have undertaken similar work. And some of the volunteers have witnessed the more gruesome consequence of old fencing.
We came across a bighorn sheep that had got its horns tangled in the wire. I mean, it was long past, but still, it must have been a horrific way to go. And it was definitely a reminder of why the fence needs to go.
The group has taken down fence in this area before. In the past, they were able to remove about a mile of it per day, but not on this trip.
This fence is kind of left for last because it is a hard fence.
It runs deep in a canyon, down scree slopes and along rocky ledges. Every pulled post and barbed wire roll is packed out of the canyon. And by the end of the day, the group is exhausted.
Today was a little bit on the brutal side. We were on the side of a hill. It got hot today. It's the steepest place I've ever removed fence.
This is the hardest fence pull we have ever done. I don't think anybody up there would say otherwise.
But there's a quarter-mile less fence on Pine Creek. With this shared exhaustion comes the camaraderie of shared experiences and a feeling of ownership, responsibility, and affinity for this small corner of Central Oregon.
It's the reward of looking over your shoulder as you're leaving and not seeing any fence, and how beautiful that looks, just open and free.
And the next morning, they'll head down into the canyon once again to pull more fence and return another stretch of rangeland to wilderness.
Jess Burns reporting for EarthFix, an environmental reporting project made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. A San Diego sailor has been named to the U.S. Olympic team. Brianna Provancha of San Diego and Annie Hager of East Troy, Wisconsin were named to the team yesterday during the European Championships. They won last year's Olympic test event in Rio de Janeiro. They have been the top U.S. athletes in their class for more than 3 years.
We're a team, and we've been a team since day one, and we're going to be a team in Rio, and I wouldn't want anybody else to share this experience with, and I'm over the moon right now.
Rio marks their first Olympic Games. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has picked a veteran GOP strategist to run his California campaign. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.